witch-wearing souls, my name is Allorah Rayne, and in today's adventure, we are doing another Budget Witch DIY. I am going to show you how to use or reuse candles in your home to make your own spell candles. I have been making candles for about a decade, and it's taken a lot of practice and a lot of screw-ups, but over the years, I have garnered some massive knowledge on making candles, what works, what doesn't work, and I'll also be including tips and tricks to show you guys so that you can take what I've learned and put it into practice for yourself at home in your own practice, or even if you get really interested in it, you can put it into your witchy business. All right, so today the camera's not gonna really be on my face. I'm gonna face it down so you guys can see what I'm doing. So if you're ready and this sounds like something that interests you, let's go. Okay guys, so as you can see, I have a giant mason jar of wax here. This is actually wax that was left over from the candles I made for my cousin's wedding. So it was sitting here in a jar and it was a solid mass, and I have melted it so that we don't have to waste time melting it. It's already pre-melted. But when you melt it, you can do this one of two ways. You can either melt it in the oven or in the microwave. Yes, you can microwave wax. If you choose to microwave it, make sure that you go in small increments and make sure that you're stirring it and checking on it. And you also want to, if you're doing it either way, you want to get a candy thermometer because you will need to know what temperature the wax is. I use soy blended wax, and until they make something cheaper that's better for the environment, then that is what I'll be using. I would love to use beeswax, but it is ridiculously expensive. So I always use soy blend wax. Now this particular wax, the pouring temperature is between 135 and 150. So I have my thermometer in here, and right now we're sitting at about 148 degrees Fahrenheit, which equals about 66 degrees Celsius. So we're at the perfect pouring temperature. So I'm gonna go ahead and get out the jars for the candles, the pouring pot, and a measuring cup. Here I have my measuring cup and my pouring pot. Also, you will need pot holders because it is hot and you cannot grip it with your bare hands. So I already know that the jars that I've selected are 12 ounces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 12 ounces with my measuring cup. And that's right here. This way we don't waste a lot of wax, and if there's leftover wax, you can make even more candles, or you can choose to do different projects with it, what have you. But I'm pretty sure most of this wax will get used. So that's 12 ounces. And then we just do it one more time. And that's perfect. So next, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and put in our dye. Now you can dye candles a million types of ways. There is liquid dye like I have here, and we're going to be using a coral peach color. But dye also comes in wax blocks, it comes in wax chips. There are all kinds of different types of wax dye. Now, if you are on a budget, crayons work just as well, because a wax block dye is basically a giant crayon that you're melting into the hot wax. So we're gonna go ahead and do this. You wanna make sure that you know the ratios to get the right shade that you're looking for. That's why I prefer liquid dyes over any other, because liquid is more precise. So I already know that I need to add 8 drops to make 2 candles. Or 2 12-ounce candles, I should say. So now that we have the dye in our pouring pot, we want to stir it around and make sure that the dye is evenly distributed. If you're doing this with crayons, it will take a few minutes to melt the crayons into the hot wax, I suggest melting them first in the microwave. You can do that, make sure you pull the paper off. And then you can add herbs and oils, which is what I'm going to do here. I have mixed up some chamomile and some rosebuds for these. So I'm just gonna put about 2 teaspoonfuls because I found any more than that clutters at the top, and then you have issues with remelting because sometimes the tops will have pitting and different things in them, and you have to remelt the top, but we'll talk about that another time. Today we're just learning how to make the candles. Okay, so now we have this, and I want to make sure that I'm keeping an eye on the temperature because we don't want it to go lower than 135 degrees Fahrenheit. So once I have the herbs in there, I'm gonna add my oils. Now I've already mixed this up. This is a mixture of lavender, lemongrass, and bergamot. And you wanna make sure that you're using an ounce of carrier oil to however much essential oil that you're using. Our temperatures dropped significantly, so I'm gonna stick this back in the oven. So let's stop and talk about essential oils in candles. One of the things that you'll need to do is you'll need to dilute it with a carrier oil, like I said previously. And you can use several different types of oil. I use fractionated coconut oil for my candles. You can pick this up in a variety of ways, from the grocery store to online to whatever. I like to make sure that my stuff is ethically sourced, and so I choose to use this type of oil. I have also used grapeseed oil as well for candles. You don't want to use anything that has a type of scent. So I won't use like avocado oil because avocado oil is one, heavy, and it does have a scent to it. But you're just going to use about an ounce per 12 to 16 ounces of wax. So for 2 candles, you should use about 2 ounces. I've used a little less in these candles because they are for personal home use. And when you're mixing in essential oils, you want to formulate blends. Now, there are high notes, low notes, and all kinds of stuff to learn about essential oils. So you can do that on your own and make your own formulas, or you can search online to find formulas that you like, magical oil recipes. There are tons of websites out there. But to make candles, you need to dilute your essential oil in a carrier oil. And the reason for that is because if you just use essential oils without a carrier, the throw or the smell that the candle puts off will be very, very minimal. Now, essential oil candle scent is much lighter than a candle that is scented with a candle perfume or a candle scent, because that stuff is chemicals and it is essentially a perfume for wax, whereas essential oils are more natural. Another thing you can do to enhance the scent is to dress the candles. Now you can choose to dress them in the same oil that you put into the candle, or you can dress them in other oils, or you can mix the two. But I highly recommend dressing your candles, especially any type of container candle, because it's real easy. You just dab whatever oil on your finger and you move it around on the wax. You can do that magically by chanting or having music on or saying something in your head, whether it's an affirmation or what have you. So that is my best recommendation for getting the most scent out of a candle. Okay, so now I've had this in the oven for a little bit, and I'm going to put the thermometer back in and make sure we're at a good pouring temperature. And in the meantime, I'm going to put my wicks in here. One of the biggest tips I can give you about making candles is to ensure that your candle wick and your candle wax work together. You may need to do some research. You will have to buy wicks. I don't know any material around the house that you can reuse for candle making as far as a wick is concerned. But here I have wicks. These are HTP wicks. I love them, and they work well with any soy blend wax. I also have these little things on the bottom. You don't need these to make candles, but these make my life easier because they're little stickers and they stick to the bottom of the jar great and they don't melt. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put this in the jar. These wicks are really for vigil candles, but they will work for these as well because the diameter of the jar is the same size. And when you're choosing a wick, the diameter of the candle that you're making is massively important. Okay, now I'm gonna do the second one. And the metal thing you see me putting over the wick is a wick centering device. Now I'm not locking that in place until we pour the wax. Wick centering devices are pretty cost effective, but you don't need them necessarily to make candles. These are skewers for shish kebabs, and I've actually used these to wick a candle before. So what you would do is you would just take this and wrap it around and put it on top of the candle. These are really cheap. They come in packs of about 100, and they're great for candle making, from stirring to doing your wicks to whatever. Now these wicks are pre-tabbed, so if you like the look of these wicks and you don't want to fuss with making wicks yourself, you want to get pre-tabbed wicks. But wicking also comes on a spool, and you can do the metal part yourself with a pair of pliers, so you can buy them separate. But for these candles, I have got pre-tabbed wicks to make my life a little bit easier. All right, we're at a good pouring temperature, so we're gonna go ahead and pour these candles. So you kind of want to hold the wick while you're doing this, or else your wick may get drowned by the wax. Looks like our second candle is going to be a little bit less, but that's okay because these are for home use anyway. Now, if I was creating these for magical purposes, it would be more precise than this. And definitely if I was creating them for business purposes, more precise than this. But this is just leftover wax, so it's not a big deal. One of the reasons why we heat the jars, or you want to heat your container that you're using, is so that the container and the wax cool at the same rate. That way you don't get a whole lot of wet spots or frosting on your candles. But anyhow, now that we have our candles poured here, they are going to take about a day to cool and about a day to cure. So it'll be about 2 days before we can mess with these again. So that is our quick tutorial on how to take leftover wax and make candles for your home, or if you want to make spell candles for your practice. This is an easy way, and it reuses things so you're not wasting materials, and it doesn't cost you a ton. So another cool thing that I want to show you, something else that you can do to liven up your candles, is I have pigments that I will paint the tops of the candles with. And these are, I'll show you, these are glittery pigments. Now these I've purchased for the specific purpose of painting the tops of candles. However, you can take eyeshadow pigments and use them as paints as well. You can take any eyeshadow, any makeup that is a really rich pigment and paint with it on wax. It works swimmingly. I have done it before. Another thing too is I reuse a lot of containers and things around the house when I'm making candles. So these are throwaway shot glasses that we just happen to have laying around that work great for mixing oils, because you want to mix your oils before you pour them into the wax. And then these are just little ice cream dishes that we've had for umpteen years, that my mother has had for umpteen years. So I use these for herbs, and it makes a great shaker. So you can get really creative looking around your house to use things that you already have. So this doesn't have to be an expensive project. The only things that you'll really need to buy are skewers, some wicks, and any type of herbs and oils that you'd like to put into them. If you have crayons laying around, you can use those for pigment, or you can choose to buy wax block dye or liquid dye. If you're really getting into candle making, you can use all of those things. But on the cheap, for your own home, those are the only things that you really need to purchase. You also probably have one of these laying around your house. This was an extra one that I happen to have, so I dedicated it to the purposes of candle making. Wax can be kept in any type of container that is glass. You can use plastic, but I don't recommend it because you never know if the hot wax will melt the plastic. So any type of glassware that you have works just fine. You can also reuse candle containers that are already in your home. So if you have a candle that is 3/4 of the way gone or half the way gone and you want to refresh it, you can melt the wax that's already in the container and then reuse the container itself. So it's not a big deal to come by candle container stuff. All right, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you got something out of this video. If you liked this video, please like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell so that you can see when a new video is out from me. I put out content every Wednesday, and if you'd like a session with me or are interested in purchasing any type of candle that I make, check out my website, www.allorahraine.com. All the links are below. Love you guys, and until next time, happy trails.